When you are communicating your data, because just like an experiment is not worthwhile until you have data and analysis, if you can't communicate that analysis to anyone else to compel them to provide funding or move a project forward or pay for your next trial, whatever it is that you need to do, you will have wasted all of your time. So making sure that you have a concise interpretation of your data and those results that's supported by some sort of graph or statistical analysis or plot or illustration. And then if you're trying to explain it to people, an explanation that involves the least amount of technical jargon, acronyms, that's going to be the most effective, because the simpler that you can make the interpretation of your information, the more of that your audience will be able to absorb, and the more they'll be able to follow your story arc, which is where you want to take them to achieve your desired outcome, to get the team on the same page, to get the management to fund, whatever goal it is you're trying to advance. When I read a science article and I'm trying to assess whether the study was well run or reliable, I look at how they conducted the study. Does it look like they've identified the right variables? Or are there things that, even from my perspective, and I may not be an expert in their particular area of study, but if I can identify variables that they have not considered, which were not controlled or identified in their study, that's a big flag for me. I like to see multiple data points collected at each set point to show that they get the same answers multiple times. I like to see a small spread in that data, meaning they actually have a handle on how to control, and they're putting in the right, they're controlling the right variables that will give them the output that they're seeking. I like to see conclusions that are supported by graphs that make sense. So you don't look at the graph and then look at the conclusion and say, that's not what I conclude by looking at that data. So I like to see consistency and thoroughness in the alignment of the way the data is represented and the conclusions that they're drawing. So advice that I would give to students as they are doing their own research and they're accessing information which is freely available on the web, it's fantastic, right? You have an infinite number of resources at your fingertips, literally. But just because it's available doesn't actually mean it's correct. I remember hearing about the kid who wrote the article, the paper about the whales in the Great Lakes, and that's because they found it on the internet. So you need to be really careful about the information that you find that's freely available, as it might not be accurate. I think the peer review process does help provide some measure of control over data to ensure that it's as reliable and accurate as possible. And so it's really important to try to triangulate on the truth when you're getting information from sources. So if you can find that same data or answer from multiple sources, at least one of which is a credible source, then you can be fairly sure that that data is probably correct.